Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're back working on our Christmas project, the Bringing Home the Christmas Tree quilt. And today we're working on the backing for that. As you recall, we have the front of the quilt already ready to go, and just in the last couple of days I have placed the batting along with the top and matched them up. I just need to get the backing done, and I wanted to bring you along on this part of this project with me. We'll be right back, and I'll tell you what I've done to prepare and show you what happens next. Alrighty, we are working on the backing to our Bringing Home the Christmas Tree quilt. And I decided to use the same fabric that I used as the background on the backing for a couple of reasons. Number one, I like it. Number two, it is appropriate for this quilt because it doesn't scream holiday, but it's very, very happy. Now it's going to work really good for a backing that we're going to have to piece two pieces together, because the pattern for the confetti, and this is called confetti. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now what it's called. It's called Pink Paisley, and it's P-A-I-S-L-E-E. And then it's called Confetti Wishes, and this was printed specifically for the Hobby Lobby stores. So I think to find it, you're probably going to have to go there. So as I said, this fabric has an irregular pattern to it, so we don't have to worry too much about matching up that pattern. If you recall, for last year's project, we did focus on matching up the backing for that because it was a pretty static pattern in the dots for that. And if they weren't matched up, you would be able to look at it and say, there's the seam. This one, I don't think we're going to have that issue. So what I've done, I have the original fabric that I bought when I started this project. And then I went back and I got about 3 more yards because I wouldn't have enough in that first batch to finish the backing, so I needed a little bit more. And then I did a little sketch. Once I got the quilt top laid out on the batting, then I could do a rough measurement and see how big this backing needed to be. And one other thing while I'm quickly thinking about it, I ordered a different kind of batting for this particular quilt because of my limited options. And I wanted to see too if perhaps there was another option out there that wasn't quite as expensive as the warm and white that I've been using. So I will let you know in a future video what my thoughts are with that new batting and the link to order it in another video. So once I had the measurements for the top of the quilt, then I came in and drew a little sketch. And this is a really rough sketch here. I actually tore my fabric as well. But I was trying to figure out what the most efficient way of lining up this fabric was. And I think what I'm going to do is the short end of the quilt, the fabric is going to go this way and then this way with a seam roughly in the middle. It probably will be a little bit off. If I had the time or I had extra pieces or I wanted to go to one more level of detail, I could choose to put a decorative stripe on the back of the quilt. I think it would be really cute if we had one little stripe of just flying geese that went all the way across it where that seam was. But I don't want to do that for this one because I really want to get it finished. And I think we're even here in the time that I'm recording this, mid-August. I really need to get busy on this to get that done. So we're going to skip that extra step on this quilt and maybe we'll pick it up on something else later. So we're going to sew it together with these 2 seams, and I made the calculations and figured out what I needed. Now, I decided to take both pieces of fabric, the whole thing, because one was about 3 yards and the other one was probably about 2.5. And I'm just going to sew that seam down the whole thing. And then I will probably trim it and then cut it to the size I need. And what we're going to do to sew them together, let me find my pin seam because it's kind of all just tossed up here, willy-nilly. Here we go. Here is where we're going to join them. And on this particular fabric, we have a printed selvage on one side, and the other selvage just has a little blue stripe. Or it could be a black stripe, I'm not sure. We're going to join this side with the little stripe, and that way I preserve that selvage in case I want to look for more fabric. I'll have that information. So this is the side we're going to sew together. Now, that selvage on here, all you really see is that little tiny blue line. And that's only 1/8 of an inch in from the raw edge here. But the actual selvage probably comes to here, which is about a little less than 1/2 inch from that striped line. So what we're going to do is we're probably just going to have a 1-inch seam from that blue line. And the reason we're going to do that is so we are well beyond the selvage. So once we sew it, we can come back then and cut off every bit of that heavily woven area here. And that will mean that our seam then will be pure weave of fabric and won't have any selvage, because the selvage doesn't give. The fabric does. So once you cut it off, it allows that fabric to shift and stretch and contract back again the same way there on the edge that it does in the middle. And that's what we're looking for. So I've pinned this probably about every 10 inches. And I'm going to sew it. And I'm just going to use just a regular link stitch. Usually I use about a 2.4. And it's just going to be a straight stitch. And it is all scrambled here. It's going to be a lot to handle. But we're just going to go at it slow. Take our time and sew through. Now, because it's such a long seam, I'm going to probably talk to you a little bit right when I get started and then fast forward through the rest of this. So I went about 1-inch seam. Let me grab my ruler again. And I'm going to need to swap out feet because I had my 4-inch slip on there. And I can tell you right now, there is not going to be enough thread in this bobbin. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we've got another one. We do. I love that, have that bobbin ready to go. And this machine is so easy to swap out bobbins or thread that it just makes sewing a joy. I know I've talked about before, back before the dinosaurs roamed the earth, that trying to change up a bobbin or rethread a needle was really a chore. But now with some of these new machines and the features they have on them, it really is a joy to sew with. Okay, so we're getting back now. We want to put about 1-inch seam in here. So I'm going to use my little magnetic seam guide. And I can see on my needle plate right where that needs to go, and I'll just put that in place. And we're just going to check it from time to time to make sure that we are, actually I'm going to make this just a little bit more than 1 inch. So it can accommodate a little fluffy edge. Our goal here in the end is to make sure that once we trim it, we still have probably a 1/2 inch seam allowance that we can either press to one side or open up. And that will give us plenty of room to prevent any fraying or ripping out of seams when a quilt is used. Just kind of double checking where we're at. I'm going to make it just a little bit lighter. Oops. All right, here we go. And at the beginning, I am going to do a little back stitch to lock us in place. Pin cushion. We're going to try to balance the weight of our fabric being on the floor, on the table, and then on my knee, so that we are not pulling against it. And we're going to check probably every 10 to 12 inches and just make sure everything is lined up where we need it to be. We've got a lot of grace there in this seam allowance. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to hook some pretty music here so you can just relax and watch this process. Okay, we got to the end of that. It was, I would say, probably, well, we needed to be at least 74 inches long. So it was probably in the neighborhood of 2.5 yards was the stitch, the seam that we just sewed. So it did take a little while, and I took my time so I could go and make the fabric match up as far as the edges as much as possible. Being very careful with that. And here is the end, and you can see one strip is a little longer than the other. Here's our seam. Okay. And you probably can see here where the fabric is on the other side, and that's a pretty good seam there. It is probably 1 1/8 inches, maybe 1.25 inches, somewhere in between. So our next step is going to go back and trim that seam. Let me get it open for you. And we're going to start on the other end where we're matched up. And I'm going to do this like a big magic trick. We're going to have the edge here so I can see it better and so you can see it on the overhead camera. Okay, I think that's good. Okay, I've got some tools. First of all, I've got a little rotary cutter, and I've got my little ruler here. I think I'm not going to use that. I think I'm going to use this one because a longer one will give us a straighter cut, and it will mean that we won't have to stop and reposition quite as much. We're still going to have to do it several times, but it won't be as much as the smaller ruler. And what we're going to do is we are going to, first of all, adjust our camera a little bit. All right. Here we go. Now, for illustrative purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this seam line with this blue marker. Whoops. When you know I got it off. Okay, so this one here is our seam line. And you can see how far that is away from the edge. And the edge of the selvage is actually right here. That's where the weave of the fabric gets thicker from here out. Now, what we want to do is we want to cut all of this off. So I'm going to put my line here. I'm going to look at what a 1/2 inch looks like. I think we could probably do 5/8. It's a little harder to match that up. We can do it. There's 5/8. So let's cut that in this little section and see what we think about that. Okay, so now we have 5/8 from the edge of this to the seam line here. From here to here is 5/8. Now we have a 5/8 inch seam in this because it is the backing. And it's a really long seam, and it's the only seam on the back of that fabric. So what I'm going to do, that amount took all of this very densely woven fabric out. And now the edge of this will stretch, and you can actually pull on it there on the edge and see how it gives. If you pulled on this, it doesn't really give. Now it does just a little bit because the very edge of that is the regular weave, but if you pull on this side, it's not going to give. So that's the reason for that. I'm going to I'm going to trim all of this. It's going to take me a while since it's so long. And then I'm going to press this. Now, I probably will press it to one side because it's, I don't know that it's any stronger, but if you pull it and it's all pressed to one side, even if it comes loose a little bit, you don't see it any gap because it's got fabric underneath it. So that's what I'm going to do. The only thing about pressing a backing to one side is when you get ready to quilt it, unless you're watching it, you could have a situation where it opens up. So you just might want to keep and be mindful of that. For this one, I don't think it's going to matter too much because there's so much design on the front of it that that's really what's going to capture your attention. And you're going to be focused more on the front than the back. So I'm going to move forward with this. I don't know if you've noticed on the channel, some of my projects are way ahead of schedule and have lots of videos. And some of them are behind. And this is one of the ones that I'm kind of feeling like it's behind. So I want to get something accomplished today. So I'm going to get this trimmed and pressed, and then I'm going to place it on top of what I already have sandwiched to finish that process. We've covered that in some other videos. You might want to check the channel, any videos on sandwiching. And I'll try to link one to the little cards at the end of the video if you need help with that or you want to see how it's done. And then we'll come back next time and we'll probably be working on some of the quilting for this project. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you like my content, give me a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you next week here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.